Hello and welcome to this repair tutorial, and today we're going to look at a Rotel, and the model number is RB-03, and this is a power amplifier. In terms of general specifications, continuous power output is 2 times 70 watts into 8 ohm speakers, but if you configure the amplifier to run in bridge mono mode, the output power then will increase to 1 times 180 watts into 8 ohms. But if you connect 4 ohm speakers, this will go up to 200 watts for a single channel. Frequency response is 10 Hz to 100 kHz, and then total harmonic distortion over the frequency range of 20 Hz to 20 kHz is 0.03%. Input sensitivity is 1 volt, impedance of 33 kiloohms, and then dimensions: width 435 by a height of 92 by a depth of 334. And the weight of the amplifier is 7.5 kilograms. And then here we have the extract from the service manual, and this is showing you the wiring diagram. And it's nice and clear, so you can see on the left and right hand side what are effectively the large power heat sinks, and then in the center, just towards the rear, you have the large electrolytic smoothing capacitors and then protection fuses. Moving towards the front part of that, you can see the large multi-tap toroidal transformer. Then to the right of that, there is a trigger control module, which you'll see a little bit later. And then in terms of additional information, if you look towards the left, you can then see the toroidal transformer is shown separately. You can see the power on off switch and this trigger control module. Now, what was the issue when this amplifier came into the workshop? The issue really is twofold. The first one is because of the age of the amplifier, the large smoothing capacitors really have dried up completely, and if you took them out of the circuit board and gave them a shake, you'll find that they actually rattle. And then there's also the issue associated with this brown glue. It's really localized around the bottom of these electrolytic capacitors, and the manufacturers put it in there just to provide some form of mechanical strength. But as we know, and what we've said throughout many tutorials, is this glue goes conductive and it also goes corrosive, so it needs to be removed. If it's making contact with any wide links or components, it's going to cause you a major issue. Right in the center of the 4 electrolytic power supply capacitors is a grounding screw, and you must make sure that that is put back in when you reassemble, but also that it's nice and tight, because you don't want any issues with noise being generated. Now, remember that when you are desoldering these electrolytic capacitors, although you will desolder the 2 pins, the positive and negative, you're going to have to wiggle these capacitors around a little bit just to break the surface tension of the glue. And then looking here from the top of the amplifier, you can see that all 4 of the electrolytic smoothing capacitors have been removed. And then the next thing which we do is to remove all of that brown glue. The way in which you can do that, you can use a plastic label removal tool just to scrape it away. What I will always say is 2 things. First of all, don't use something like a flat blade metal screwdriver, because you're going to damage the circuit board. And then the other one is just to ensure that you wear eye protection. Don't take the risk to say, oh, I think it'll be okay, because I'll guarantee some of this glue will be hard and it'll flick up and it could cause eye damage. So, just for a few minutes, just put your protection goggles on and you should be fine. Here we show all of that brown glue is gone, and as you see that there is no damage whatsoever to any part of the circuit board. Those fuses as well, which you see, just ensure that the ends of those fuses are making good contact with the end of the fuse holders. Sometimes you can find that they can splay out a bit and maybe you get intermittent contact, so just take care of that. And then here the next thing that we do is really to lift up the main amp board, and what I'm doing is I'm just scanning that board just for any dry solder joints. Anywhere where you have a mechanical stress point, like the RCA sockets for example, I'm just resoldering. Now on this amplifier, what there was really an extensive amount of flux. On the audio output transistors, extreme left and right, where you see the large black metal heat sinks, you can really distinguish between some of the pins. So rather than just leave all that brown stuff, I just use the flux remover again. Just spray onto there and you'll find that it will dissolve, and then you can use something like an old toothbrush and just brush backwards and forwards, and then use some kitchen towel just to mop it up. And then what you'll find is that those connections then will be nice and bright and not heavily coated in this flux. And then here what we see is more of a zoomed in view, so you can see these protection fuses, and there are 4 of them in total, and they are T, which is a time delay fuse, rated at 3.15 amps. And then this module mounted at the rear is what we call the trigger control So this is where you can have an external signal connected, and you could have a master on off. On this power amplifier there is also a toggle switch we can just sort of make out, which is that red multi-pin component there, and you just toggle between if you're going to use the remote connection or remote trigger startup or not. Just remember that the main power button will override the operation of that. You also find on the circuit board are a series of links. This is where you can reconfigure the amplifier to run in mono mode, or you're going to use it in stereo mode. And then this circuit board here is the trigger control. There is a relay on there, and this relay is just replaced as part of the service and repair. And then once that has been done, if we look here, you can see the Sanken audio output transistors. You can also see the brand new Nichicon capacitors, and all of the electrolytic capacitors were replaced. You can also make out as well on that circuit board, there's a small blue preset, and you'll see that in a moment because that is a preset which is used to adjust the output bias with regard to the respective channel. And then here, if we take a extract from the service manual, what you can see here is this is the left channel, and what we're looking to do is just to measure across the test connector, so TP1, and we're going to adjust that until you read 4 millivolts. So what you need to do is to leave the amplifier in a stable environment, approximately 20 minutes just to warm through, and then connect your multimeter, as I said, across these test points, and then make the adjustment. So here what you see is the left-hand channel, and you can see that it's a little bit low at 2.93 millivolts. And then here, the right channel is a little bit low again at 3.37 millivolts. And the millivoltage reading, as you saw, that we need to achieve is 4 millivolts. So here we just show the left because we did the same also then for the right. And we're just ensuring that that is now set to 4 millivolts. And then here, if we take a view from the top of the amplifier, this is with all of the work done. So no longer there is the brown gluing issue. And as we said, all of the electrolytic capacitors have been replaced and the bias set for both channels. We also check on this amplifier as well, the DC offset. That's straightforward. You can just measure across the rear terminals. But just remember that this amplifier doesn't incorporate a speaker protection system. It's going directly then to the speaker terminals. But if you did find high DC on there, looking at the input stages of the amplifier, and it's what we call the long tail pairs, and you would have seen them on the circuit diagram which we saw earlier. And then here you can see the electrolytic capacitors all removed. These are the large Rotel branded power supply electrolytics, and then you can also see these small signal electrolytics. And then the last thing to do is just to place the amplifier on test. And normally for these power amplifiers they run for about 4 hours, and perfect operation. This is the third one which has been done. There's another one yet to be done, and you'll see later that I'll make another repair tutorial just to finish off that series of amplifiers. And indeed the preamplifier, which I'll put a link in the description of this video, which is the RB-03, is coming from the same system. So really the customer has taken the step to have all of the devices just refurbished and serviced. And then really that brings us to the end of this repair tutorial. So I thank you as always for stopping by, and if you need any help, guidance or assistance, by all means email audioamplifierservicing@aol.com, and I'll be more than happy to come back and provide any support that you may require. So until the next time, I wish you all the very best. Cheers and bye-bye.